If you think Nostradamus' Book of Prophecy is the most popular prophecy in the world, you're totally wrong. Many people have read Tui Bei Tu during the last 1300 years. Tui Bei Tu is like a comic strip. It follows a strict timeline. So you can count on what will happen once you decode what is happening now. It was so popular during the Song dynasty, people would use words from the book to name their children, and was mentioned in the Song dynasty history book. But the popularity scared the Emperor of China, who did not like Tu's interpretation of what would happen to his empire. So he decided to try to put a stop to it. Banning failed miserably, so he decided to change the sequence of events, poems, and graphics. In a short time, the book market was flooded with 100 different versions of the book. The intention was to discredit Tui Bei Tu so no one would want to read it. It was a very smart move, but in several hundred years, people began to weed out the real one from the bunch of intentional forgeries. So the real copy survived together with some of the forged ones. So in dynasty after dynasty, Tui Bei Tu continued its advanced news reporting. I sometimes have wondered if the author Li Chongfeng and Wan Tengong intended to show future generations the future they would face, or they wanted to show us that the future is set, and they knew all about it. I've said that Tui Bei Tu is not vague. Actually, it is so precise that you will be stunned when you see how the future was predicted with major players' names encoded. The names were so well hidden, most of them avoided detection during the last 1300 years. But now, I will share with you what I have found. And trust me, many of you will be so impressed. Some of you may decide to order Rosetta Stone and start to learn Chinese. At the end of the Ming dynasty, a famous scholar, Jinxing Tan, decided to share his view on Tui Bei Tu. His extensive knowledge in history in China shed light on the poems before his time, and through him we spotted the correct version of the prophecy. However, he was pretty good with historical events, but failed to give precise decoding about future events. However, no one can jump all in on predicting the future based on Tui Bei Tu, unless they have a thorough understanding of the way clues are hidden. So we will now start our tour of Chinese history through Tui Bei Tu, and together we can understand the most mysterious book about China's fate. The short poem reads, quote, "Vast universe, when will the end come? Sun and moon on the run, back to where it started." The long poem reads, quote, "Since the beginning till now, non-stop fightings became the norm. The secret hidden in circling loops. Foretell future at crossroad." And the graphic is two overlapping circles, marked left one as white and the right one as red. And the poem was noted by the famous scholar 350 years ago as Jinxing Tan said the current chaos will move away with the movement of time. The next poem is about the Tang dynasty. Both authors must wonder how long the culture and economy boom they witnessed would last. And that is what they said about the Tang dynasty. The short poem reads, quote, "A plate of fruit, how many piled up, a fruit for one, new on come when old one is gone." And the long poem reads, "The land has everything." 2 and 9 marked the legend. The unified land, yin over the yang. While the graphic showed a plate of fruit, it can be apples or plums. The Tang dynasty emperor's last name is Plum in Chinese. while the fourth one from the top is the only one without a stem, and the fourth emperor is the Empress Wu, the first ruling empress of China, Wu Zetian. Jen Shenten note, this shows a plate of plum, symbolizing the Tang dynasty, 21 emperors. 2 and 9 mean the 290 years of reign. Yin meant woman, and the dynasty started with the concubine turned empress, who almost killed all the Li monarchy. After years of chaos during the short-lived Sui dynasty, AD 581 to 619, China prospered during early Tang dynasty. The second emperor, Li Ming, was intelligent, kind, and a great leader. His concubine, Wu Zetian, was sent to temple as a practicing nun after his death. However, she grabbed the heart of the new emperor, who blindly insisted on marrying his father's concubine. Eventually, she became the Empress of China. After his death, their son, Li Zian, became emperor at AD 684, but was forced to abdicate when he got on his mother's bad side. His younger brother, Li Dan, became the new emperor on 684 AD and abdicated the crown to his mother in 691 AD. Empress Wu became the first and only Empress of China. She was a great leader, but was not viewed as such in China after her death. She changed the dynasty to Shu and thought of crowning her nephew after her death so the Shu dynasty can continue. But the crown went back to her eldest son, Li Jian, who was forced to abdicate in AD 584. Her dynasty ended with her death. The next poem is more details about the one and only Chinese ruling empress. Number 3 short poem, quote, sun and moon shining bright, cast over the earth below, the confused public turned from literacy to fight. The long poem reads, through nothing left in temple, back to rule the palace, roots untouched, when all branches gone, is the morning call from the rooster or the hen. The number 3 graphic showed the only Chinese female emperors. Wu Zetian. Jinxian Tan notes, Empress Wu's name was hidden in the poem, and her slaughter of the Tang monarchy started with her own sons by forcing both of them to abdicate. The last poem told the rise of the female Empress Wu, while the next showed how her dynasty ended. Number 4 short poem reads, the flying one stayed on ground. The one to run stood their grounds. When the one with wings flew to heaven, the offspring took the crown. The long poem reads, the lady from the sky ruled with power no one expected. 18 chilled the world throughout. 5 monkeys gave their best, limping tress back to straight. The graphic showed 5 lords surrounding the female empress. Jinxiang 10 note, 5 lords supported Emperor Wu's son to inherit her throne. Parrot is called Yin Lu, which is female Emperor Wu's name. And the 2 wings meant her 2 sons. He assumed power after the death of his mother. Now the Li back to the palace. Ming dynasty soon enjoyed another prosperous period. Taiwan era led by the Emperor Li Longji, who ruled over 43 years. The first half of his reign marked the peak of Chinese culture. And then he fell in love with an incredibly beautiful woman, Yang Guifei. Yang was called one of the foremost beautiful women in China's history. and she marked the turning point of the Tang dynasty's fall from the peak. The emperor was stunned by her beauty, even though she was married to his son. He had them divorced, and then she briefly became a nun. Then she married him, and they were supposed to live happily ever after. Number 5 short poem, Yang Flower Flew, Difficult Road Shoe, Broken Bamboo Flute, Hidden Sun to Show. Long poem, Fishing Boat Float with War Drum to the Gate, Emperor Now Visit the Hill of Sword. Easy Wood Turn to Ghost at Hillside, The Glorious Ring Buried at Sight. The graphic showed strangled Lady Yang. Jinxing Tang notes, the saddle is the rebel. On Lushan and Shi Siming, the woman laying on the ground is the famous Lady Yang. Army forced emperor to sentence her to death, or they refused to fight for him. She was strangled in Horse Hill. The emperor loved Lady Yang very much, but he would be risking his own life if he wanted her alive. So he sentenced her to death. Her name was shown in this poem, while the famous Horse Hill, where she was buried, was shown in both the picture with her last and first name shown here. The rebels' names were shown in the poem also. After 8 years of intensive fighting, the government finally got the upper hand and retook the capital in 763 AD. The fighting caused over 300,000 deaths and ruined the once powerful Tang dynasty. This is what Tui Bei Tu showed. Number 6 short poem, quote, Capital is no capital. Emperor is no more emperor. Dark clouds are gone. Sun and moon shined again. The long poem reads, Big flags up again in capitals. Southern forces heading east again. Life is back, people joy seen again. First peace in 12 years. The graphic shows soldiers and people moving back to cities. Jinxing Tang noted that the emperor back to capital. However, generals realized their influence and refused to follow the emperor's orders. While foreign power from the west invaded Tang, as noted in the following number 7 poem, quote, Flags all over, land limited. Invader came suddenly, brought tears to all. The long poem reads, Ants on foot walk no more. Palace locked down, dreams fade. War drum heard outside the door, grass growing, earth crying. Picture showed a foreign-looking man. Jinxing Tang note, this seemed to show uncontrollable local lords and foreign invasion from the west. Tui Bei Tu continued describing the chaos in poem 8 as it reads, blood-stained land, rebels defeat by rebels. Blooming still by the lees, emperor escaped but moved again. The long poem reads, Emperor riding east, dust flew, 3 lords occupied central land, saved by brave army with no support. Arms worked from inside out. The picture showed 3 lords. Jen Xingtian notes, this is the Jen Shang rebel. 3 Li lords started the fights. Li Huaihuan rose to power through his victory in the last rebel war. The brave general Sheng Li defeated without little outside help. This rebellion started by the 3 Li lords. It was eventually put out by General Li, while Emperor Li had to move again to escape. Li is the same of the plum, so the players were quoted as plum flowers. This war gave the already weakened Tang emperor another blow. Despite Tang emperors no longer enjoy the power they once had, Tang dynasty had a break from fightings for almost 100 years, till another rebel stirred things up. Number 9 short poem reads, "Non-white, non-black, man wearing grass is here. Borrow a branch, blood flying." The long poem reads, "Hero stands out over people's head. Blood-stained river, fallen all the plum flowers. But the nest is empty too." The picture showed war devastations. Jin Shengtang notes, Rebel Huang Shu killed 8 million people. The general who defeated him, Zhu Wen, killed the last emperor of the Tang and started Liang dynasty, marked the beginning of the short 5 dynasty period. The 4 neighbors who once bowed to Tang's power, now realizing her vulnerability, started attacking her generals. Once they realized they held more power than the empress, started plotting against the kingdom. Generations after generations of Tang's powerful lords fought to gain more power. Eventually, the Tang dynasty ended. During the Tang dynasty's 290 years of reign, Tui Bei Tu wrote 3 poems about China's only female Empress Wu, even though she only ruled China for 15 years. During Tang Ming Huang's 12 years on Shuo rebel, 2 poems depicted the changes, but no poem during the late Tang dynasty till the Huang Shu rebel caused the eventual fall. People say history is the best teacher, and we can learn so much in reading Tang's history and the Tui Bei Tu prophecy. The Tang dynasty reached a peak in both culture and economics during the early years, but the once great emperor allowed power to ruin his integrity, forcefully married his daughter-in-law, and started trusting people he should never have trusted. Then the empire was never the same. Tui Bei Tu's illustration of Tang also gives us a glimpse of how the book foretold history. It seems as if the prophecy is not to warn future generations, but to show off their knowledge of the future. The details they hid in the poems and pictures shows almost like a statement, saying that the future was set in stone. Or was it? Many people laugh at prophecy believers. They think the vague poems can be applied to anyone and to any event in any way. Well, the authors must have known this before writing the book, so they put names of the major players there, so you can't be mistaken. Like Emperor Wu's name is here in the poem, and her name again appeared in the pictures, while her minister's names are here. Then Emperor Tang Mingguang's beloved Lady Yang's name is here. The place she was executed was here. The names of the rebels are here. And the fact the emperor returned to the capital after his abdicating to his son was in this poem. And then the names of all the rebels were hidden in the poems outlining the fightings. It followed a strict timeline, and the information could not have been presented better. I mean, in such a condensed form, with only 40 to 50 words. While trying to explain the complicated dynasty changes and political events with names of the important players, some words cannot be taken literally. I mean, the words can mean more than what you saw. This is the part where most scholars have failed. But now, poem after poem, I will unveil the hidden secrets and share with you the fascinating history of China in the eyes of 2 prophets. China was in chaos when the Tang dynasty ended in 907 AD. The once powerful empire was occupied by powerful lords. Most lords claim rights to more land and crowns of their own. The ones with the most land declare themselves to be the Emperor of China. But the declaration makes them the target of attacks. And their empires often fell when their trusted family and generals turned against them. In 72 years, China went through 5 dynasty changes, until China was unified again by founding Emperor Xiaokongyi in 972. The 5 short-lived dynasties and the 10 powerful kingdoms turned China into a land of chaos. How can you describe those times? Chaos, betrayals, fightings, killings, deaths. The rise and fall of each kingdom sounded like a broken record. While the dynasty changed so rapidly, it is hard to even describe. So how could Tui Bei Tu actually prophesy such history? Well, how should I say this? What most of us considered impossible to describe, Tui Bei Tu did the impossible thing in such ways we can only call it impossible to describe better. Let's start with number 10. The short poem reads, "Vast land can't control the 8 bulls. Dive in but not washed. There's blood but the head is gone." The long poem reads, "The empress rose to heaven with 2 emperors, one family with vast water around. Kill the one who gave me life, but Li flowers are not all gone." And the picture showed a river that ran through valleys. The poem showed the founding emperor Zhu when killed the last empress of Tang with the last 2 emperors. His last name Zhu is the 2 characters 8 and bull put together, while his first name Wen is water on the left, blood without the top, plus a sun. It is hard to miss Emperor Zhu's last name hidden in 8 bulls. But few notice the first name hidden in 3 different words. But even the most critical of people can't deny the accuracy described in the long poem. Zhu killed Empress Ho, her husband Emperor Zhao, and poisoned her son, Emperor Ai of Tang. Poor Emperor Ai ascended to the throne at age 11, after General Zhu assassinated his father and blamed someone else for the crime. He was forced to abdicate in AD 907, but was poisoned a year later at age 15. His mother, the queen, was also killed. The brutal killing set a bad example to the new emperor's son, who decided to accelerate his rise to reign by killing his father. That's the quote, "Kill the one who gave me life." The power gained from killing his father did not last long. He was defeated by his younger brother the following year and died. His younger brother ruled China for 10 years, but was defeated and by a descendant of the Tang dynasty named Li Yuan, who started the New Tang dynasty. The dynasty after Liang was New Tang. As stated in poem 10, it continued the Li Tang dynasty, but the emperors were actually foreigners from the north. They were given the last name Li by Tang emperor for their support, and the new Li emperors did reestablish the Tang dynasty and were intelligent, decisive leaders. But they were slaughtered by people close to them. The 3 emperors all died miserable deaths. The short poem outlined the death of the founding emperor. It's a perfect example of names being hidden. 5 people drawn for fate showed no money nor joy. To sum up, happy, anger, sad, and joy. And the killer's name is hidden in the first and second lines. The long poem states, "Dragon and snake fight 30 years. One day both will reach heaven. Heaven would be the place to play. Soldiers from east riding towards capital." Although the short-lived Tang dynasty lasted only 14 years, the major players were in the pictures for 30 years. The sad drama repeated itself throughout the dynasty. The winner killed his family, and then soon was killed by another family member. That's why the poem said dragon and snake both reach heaven. But the war games they played cost the lives of millions. In 907 AD, the last emperor died in the hand of his brother-in-law, and that started the new dynasty Qin. The new Qin dynasty started with a big shame. Emperor Shi was surrendered by the new Tang force and decided to seek help from the enemies, the northern invaders. Together they defeated the new Tang and started a new chapter, Qin, in Chinese history. But he had to give up 16 provinces to the northern invaders and give annual contributions and call the northern invading emperor his father, even though he was 10 years older than his father. This is outlined in the following poem, number 12. The humiliating story was foretold in the short poem. What a stone calling others dad. The 2-8 province is no longer Tongland. Qin's emperors named Shi, which in Chinese means stone, and he called himself the Sun Emperor, which is outlined in line 2. The province 2-8 meant the 16 provinces. No longer Tongland meant given away, but put Tong and land together is the first name of the emperor. The long poem reads, rebels started with talk, no control going in and out. Release bell need the one put on. Father died and son followed. Emperor Shi died soon after 2 sons died in battle. His surviving son, Tanguan, died 4 years later and ended the Qin dynasty. Qin started with the help of the northern invaders and ended by attacks of the northern invaders. That's why the poem said, release bell by the one putting it on. Meant to be the emperor of the new Han dynasty. New Han had 2 emperors, but they only lasted a total of 4 years. It was mentioned in this poem 13. The short poem reads, dried up the Han water, bird fly high, flying around where to stop. City wall is higher than the hills. The first line pointed to the end of the new Han dynasty, which called themselves Water Dynasty. The last name of Cao of the new Shu dynasty is in line 4, while his nickname Bird is in line 2. The long poem reads, 100 birds flying over water. 99 of them reached mountain west. One say with broken foot, staying high above clear his feather alone. This riddle has not yet been fully decoded during the last 1300 years. But after comparing the historical facts, I think I got it. Emperor Ku did not intend to rebel against the new Han Emperor, but the new Han Emperor thought he was rebelling. So he killed all his sons and family. Ku was so upset, he rebelled against the new Han Emperor and killed him. That's why the long poem said 100 birds flying. 99 flew away, only one stood high on broken foot. Because he had no one to leave his crown to, he had to leave the crown to his wife's nephew, Shishong. Emperor Qi was brave, kind, and a decisive leader. He was emperor only for 6 years before he got sick and died at age 39. The picture showed blooming branches out of firewood, while Qi in Chinese means firewood, and the short poem reads, pomegranate blooming with flowers, plum tree extend the roots, dry woods short blooming in spring, let the water spray from above to glory. The word dry wood meant emperor's last name, Qi, while the fourth line showed his first name, and the poem pointed to a short, glorious life, which is a perfect depiction of his achievements. He lowered tax, reinforced a once corrupted government. He defeated the northern invaders and got back 3 main provinces lost in the Qing dynasty. He got sick before he could conquer the lost land. The long poem states, "Gold, wood, water, fire, and earth now ended. 13 kids, 5 lords. Great leader brought peace. 53 fate to doom." This poem summarized the fate of the 5 dynasties. The emperors followed the Chinese 5-movement theory. So the first dynasty was called gold, then wood, water, fire, and then earth. There are a total of 13 emperors in the 5 dynasties. It ended with a great leader who brought back peace. There is a total of 53 years in which 5 dynasties reigned, just as predicted in the poem. The shocking accuracy on events during the 5 dynasty period made Tui Bei Tu the talk of the town. It was said that many parents named their babies with words found in the book. You can't blame them. In the chaotic times, anyone can be the next emperor. And if the name matches the prophecy, there's a better chance for their kids to win, right? After the death of Emperor Qing, his son at age 7 inherited the throne. But the most powerful General Shu became the new emperor and started the Song dynasty. Emperor Shu did not want to kill the young emperor, and he vowed to respect and treat him like family. So, Song dynasty started with less bloodshed. But the new emperor was very concerned about leaving the future out in the open. He did not want people to know who the next emperor may be. So he tried to ban Tui Bei Tu. When that did not work, he decided to create 100 different versions of the book and insert revised poems and pictures. But did that change the future? Was his dynasty changed? Be patient, and you will soon find that out. After years of empire changes, the Song dynasty started in AD 960. But the land was still occupied by many lords with kingdoms of their own. Tui Bei Tu started its poem about the Song dynasty with a picture of a kid swiping flies under a tree. The short poem reads, "Sky with sun and moon, the land with mountain and river. Conflicts on land after father before son." And long poem reads, "War at mainland still not end. How many people can sleep with weapon near? The real leader is here. Will wipe out evils to bring back sunshine." The first emperor, whose nickname is Sweet Kid, did spend his entire 16 years as the emperor putting off the kingdoms, refusing to bow to his reign. One country with the last name Tang seemed to be hinted at in line 2 of the long poem, while the dynasty's name Song seemed to be a combination of the first word in line 3 and the last word in line 1 of the long poem. Unlike the dynasty before, messages hidden in the characters seemed hard to find. Personally, I think the word moon was mentioned in line 1 of the short poem because the moon character appeared in the emperor's first and last name. In the short poem, line 3 seemed to depict the fact that the period is filled with conflicts, while the last line of the short poem, after father before son, seemed to give clues of Song's historical mysteries. The person taking over the throne after the first emperor died is not his son, but his brother. His brother is after his father, but was put in front of his son, just as stated in the poem. But why? It has been a mystery until this day. as many people thought the second emperor killed his brother. This unproven crime was supported by the many mysterious deaths of the first emperor's sons. But with no solid evidence, it remained a mystery until this date. The number 16 poem seemed to show how the country was unified again. The short poem reads, "Sky one bring water, style showed secret power, follow the divine and will of people, one no one had seen before." Long poem reads, "The Qing and Li giving up their lands, the rest would follow. The divine gave the chosen one the mission to unify. He would do it without massive killing." The only part clear was a long poem which showed the two biggest kingdoms conquered by the second emperor, the Li and the Qing, and the fact that the rest of the kingdoms followed them and surrendered. But unlike some poems where you can see the well-hidden names, we did not find any. But I realized the first part of the short poem, "Sky Water," is a title given to the last two emperors of the North Song dynasty. Song dynasty started under the shadow of the northern invaders. Despite the many victors putting down resistance in the south, conflicts with northern invaders usually ended with defeat. 6 years after the third emperor Chao took over the crown, the north invaders storming down the border with full force. Everyone around the emperor were planning on fleeing south. But one lord insisted on fighting back and suggested the emperor to lead the army. The emperor agreed, and his presence motivated the soldiers, and they had a decisive victory. That was described in the short poem. Sound of thunder silenced the noise of weapons. The border is now cleared and the country safe again. And the long poem reads, "Emperor lead soldiers past the river. Cheers heard 100 miles away. The complete lady planned well. One peace with treaty." This poem hardly needs any decoding. Song got a sweet victory and then quickly signed a treaty to ensure peace. They agreed to give 30,000 in silver and cloth annually. Although they were the winning party, people did not blame the emperor for buying peace, because they knew that war would be much more costly. Plus, he did show courage by leading the military. The complete lady is another word puzzle, as when you put complete and girl together, it looks very much like Lord Cao, who was the one who insisted the emperor lead the fight. The next poem again seems to be very clear. The fourth Song Emperor Yan Zong ruled 41 years, but the country was ruled by the Mother Empress during his first 11 years of reign. Empress Liu's last name can be seen on line 2 of the short poem. The period's bravest soldier, Di Qian, left side of his last name is dog, which can be found in the picture. Then in 1067 AD, Song's new young emperor wanted to turn the weak country around. He was known to be intelligent and decisive. He was impressed with Wang Anxi's proposal on how to fix the country and decided to put all chips in. If you look at Wang's proposal today, you will find it to be a very well thought out solution to the many problems of the time. It was very forward thinking and probably the best plan possible. However, having a great plan does not ensure success, because you need cooperation and many capable staff to carry out the plan. Sadly, Song dynasty did not have those. The new law ended after 20 years and left the country in ruin, and the government divided. The short poem reads, "Everyone's gone. Enter the room. Million army a stone above." The long poem reads, "Great plan started the day, failed by night. People flee to northwest. Great time, but spring's soon gone. Wish had stay inside hiding. The last word in the short poem is the name of the minister who planned the change. And the failure of the new laws forced people to leave their home. As stated in line 2 of the long poem, the emperor started the plan with great ambition to help his people and his country, but it ended up damaging the already weak empire. The next poem talked about the most talented empire in China's history. The short poem reads, "The light is gone. The sun and moon turn dark. Don't give in to Qing. The empire is sidelined." The long poem reads, "Father shared the same fate as son. Sky, sun, and moon passed through their hands. A special cloud flew past hands. Dragon and clan fear for going under." Haizong is one of the most talented artists in China's history. No one came close to his achievements in writing, poetry, and painting, but he was a terrible emperor. He came up with the brilliant idea of defeating the northern invaders by joining forces with the northern invaders' enemy. But the Song army lost in every battle and showed the northern invaders' army just how weak the Song dynasty was. He probably wouldn't make such mistakes if he had listened to his ministers, Qi, whose name appeared in But Mr. Light Just Died, which is the poem The Light Is Gone. However, the terrible advisor Qing is there, as warned in the third line of the short poem, and the bad ministers surrounding him gave him bad advice. Like many artists, he lived in a dream, while as an emperor, he could afford to live in dreams. He spent a lot of money in luxury buildings even when his empire was at the edge of financial ruin. He enjoyed the praise from bad people around him, while the name of the worst one showed in the last word of the third line of the short poem. The end was near when the northern enemy of the north invaders finished off the northern invaders and started their own Kim Empire. They set their eyes on Song. The emperor artist fled the capital and abdicated the crown to his son, as shown in the first line of the short poem. The new emperor expelled his father's emperor's bad influence, but it was too late to turn things around. This poem marked the end of the North Song dynasty, as the unfolding tragedies would start a new chapter in Chinese history when China lost these two emperors to its new enemy from the north. In AD 1129, China suffered a huge defeat and humiliation. The capital of China, Bianjing, or Beijing, was conquered by the Kim army, and the entire royal family were taken by force. Qin Cheng, the emperor, and his father Wei Chong, the emperor, abdicated months earlier, but was kidnapped and humiliated. The concubines, princess, and noble women were assigned to a brothel. Before the total collapse of the North Song dynasty, negotiations were underway. The Kim dynasty asked for a Song prince to be held as hostage. Shu Kao, the number 8 son, was sent immediately. But Kim did not feel he looked like a prince, so they sent him back and asked for a real prince, and started a new round of attacks. They soon realized the hostage prince they released was a real prince, and so they asked the Song emperor to send him back. However, before he could return to his hostage cell, the capital fell and Kim took the whole monarchy hostage instead. The sad story was detailed in Tui Bei Tu, poem number 21. The short poem reads, "Empty palace, snow 3 feet deep. Signed the emperor, the south carriage bound north." And the long poem reads, "Evil not stopped, nothing calmed down. Smoke in the north capital is far. New names being called emperor. The dynasty gone. Dynasty moves south with number 3 and 6. Picture worth 1,000 words. 2 emperors walked away with a man watching from far away. That is to show how the 2 emperors were kidnapped and died in the north. The short poem warned about the empty palace in deep snow and pointed out the time to the end of the North Song dynasty as the snowy season. While the emperors signed as they were taken away to the north, the Qin emperor's imperial name, Qing, is in line 1 of the long poem. The invading Kim dynasty set up an emperor under their control named Chongpon Shang, which is mentioned in the 3rd line. North Song has 9 emperors, which we get with the 3 and 6 added together. The 2nd line talked about the north wiped out the capital. The new emperor in the south showed courage at first. Despite his father and mother both being held in the north, and his 2 daughters were sent to the brothel, he used China's bravest general, and he cracked down on the enemies like burning firecrackers. He called for people to join him to wash out the shame and bring back the 2 emperors. But he failed to understand the delicate political world. If the 2 emperors are back, what will happen to his boss, the new emperor? So the bad ministers took brides from Kim and forced General Yuan to stop his offensive by putting him in prison and then executing him. They reached a peace agreement with Kim dynasty of the north. The new emperor got his mother back, but left the father, brother, and the 2 ruined daughters in the north. Emperor's name Go is in line 4 of the short poem, and the last word is restrain on the left and abandon on the right. He was crowned when he went to a temple and rode the horse statue back, based on a drawing from the temple. The name of the bad minister, Qin Kai, is in line 3 of the poem. His last name, Qin, top is the top of the word spring, and bottom is the right part of the word autumn. So Qin here and Kai here. Capital of Song dynasty is in Lin'an, which is the first and last word of the 4th line of the long poem. Although the entirety of China was humiliated, the South Song dynasty was for 52 years, and the 2nd line of the short poem stated, "The worst is gone. Calm finally come." The new emperor had a son. Some rebel held the 2-year-old child, then declared him emperor, and tried to overturn his father, the first emperor of the South Song, Shugo. The rebel was soon put off, and the emperor declared his son, the 2-year-old, as heir to his throne. Sadly, he died the same year. The emperor thought his family's tragedy was caused by his great-great-great-great-grandfather's taking of the throne from his great-great-great-great-grand uncle. That, plus the fact that most of his families were slaughtered, are held in the north. So he decided to give the crown back to the descendants of the founding emperor. So he found a good kid from a distant relative's family and eventually gave the crown to him. Despite living under the shadow of the north invading Kim dynasty, first emperor of South Song lived a long life and decided to give the crown to his chosen heir when he was 75. The new emperor did not appreciate this rise to the throne and refused to even appear at the emperor's funeral. This upset everyone, so they forced him to abdicate to his own son. His son reigned for 30 years but had no apparent heir. They again picked a nobody from his distant relatives. He reigned for 40 years, but sliding the dynasty into another chaotic time. The short poem of number 24 reads, "Like rule but no rule, the sun sank to darkness, bright light shining through broken handle in the river." The long poem states, fight back the attacks from invaders. Two pillars can't hold the roof long. Fighting light up the night sky. Why use lamp to play in nights? During Li Yong's 40-year reign, the Northern Qing dynasty suffered great loss from the newly formed Yuan army and their hero Genghis Khan. The emperor decided to ally with them and attack the Qing dynasty. However, the Mongolian army won in every war, while the Song dynasty lost every time. So when Qing was finished, the Mongolian army moved on to attack Song. The bad minister Jia Sidao's name was appeared in the first line of the short poem. A great scholar turned general Wen Tanshan was mentioned in the third line of the short poem, and how he fought Shang Shi and won, as Sheng was mentioned in line 4 of the short poem. Another minister, Cheng, also fought bravely, and his name Cheng was mentioned in the 4th line of the long poem. Though 2 pillars are not enough to keep the Song dynasty standing. So the next poem marked the end of the South Song dynasty. The short poem stated, "On the hill or in the ocean, is the emperor now in spirit." 3, 9, 4, and 8, the 10,000 at noon. The long poem stated 11 drawn small month end. Can't turn back tide when the road now at end. Fighting all over with no way to escape. Where to go other than inside ocean wave. The South started with tragedies and ended the same. The young emperor ran to the South, got captured and then either surrendered or killed. The last emperor ran to the sea and the minster carried him and jumped to the ocean to die instead of being captured. The meaning was clear in the long and short poems. This poem ended the Song dynasty in Tui Bei Tu. The sad and humiliating history is hard to tell even when 1,000 years have passed. However, one quote from General Wen Tanshan inspired people till this day. He wrote, quote, "There is no escape from death, but you will see the mark left from my blood." China's past glory may have faded after 1,000 years, but China's advanced building technology can be seen today at the Great Wall. Built first in 7th century BC, the wall has proven to be not only an architectural wonder, but also has provided protection from the threats of its northern neighbors. The names of its northern neighbors may have changed throughout the centuries. North Song dynasty started under the shadow of Liao and ended when Qing ended Liao and China's North Song dynasty. South Song had to buy peace under humiliating terms, including calling Qing emperor, thusly lowering China to a subordinating country. Peace was bought until Qing was defeated by the newly formed Yuan, led by its leader Genghis Khan. The Yuan dynasty conquered a big part of Asia and Europe, and its brutal killing and raping changed the world. Even today, 8% of the people today living in the conquered area carries Genghis Khan's DNA. But the powerful kingdom did not last long. It ended with only 10 emperors in 90 years. The rise can be seen in 2 of Tui Bei Tu poems for the period. Poem 25, the short poem, reads, "North Emperor, South Lord, one towering standing, Wuli River nest ready to catch." Then the long poem reads, "Three legs give support, but who end up standing? One wolf, 2 rats, who has the power to win? Is Northgate locked tight enough? Descendants there 5 and 5. The first 2 words of the short poem, line 2, made the dynasty name Yuan. While the third line of the short poem revealed the name of the famous river Genghis Khan won the support of all Mongolian tribes and got his name Genghis Khan. At the time, Yuan faced Qing in northern China and South Song on the south. That was also mentioned in line 1 of the short poem. North Emperor, South Lord, as the South bowed to the more powerful North. But in line 2 of the long poem, the three were called one wolf and two rats. So it did not take long for the wolf to finish off the two rats. Although the Yuan dynasty set the capital in China, they considered themselves superior and refused to accept Chinese culture and languages. Although they locked themselves in their way of living as stated in line 3 of the long poem, they only had 10 emperors, which was stated in line 4 of the long poem 5 and 5. The collapse of Yuan came quickly in just 75 years. Floods and droughts made life under Yuan unbearable. Around 1345, White Lily sect rebelled against Yuan. It should have been put out quickly, but Yellow River flooded on average every 1.6 years, and the government's new currency policy became the last straw. The number 26 poem stated the chaos clearly. The short poem reads, "An era with no nights, a year with no rice. Flower is no longer flower. Rebels rise like wild grass." The long poem reads, "Burning land wood everywhere. Fighting started needs no reason. Secret for long life, seek in the bedrooms. No wonder the nights never end." Emperor Shun believed in monk no flower, so the monk's name was mentioned in line 3 of the short poem. First line showed how the emperor played throughout the nights, while people had no food, as stated in line 2. This led to rebels uprising as stated in line 4 of the short poem. Then the land reached a boiling point, and the rebel leader Lin was quoted as wood, and rebels uprising shake the already shaky government and led to its collapse. The Yuan dynasty was a strange example of foreign invasion. It considered Chinese culture inferior and Chinese people low class. It abolished the tradition of selecting intellect through government-held exams, but it put great emphasis on education. It required one school for every 26,000 people. But it was unpopular among the public. It is hard to imagine a lot of the respected scholars pledging allegiance to the failed Yuan dynasty. Part of the reason maybe they could not accept the rise of the first emperor of the Ming dynasty, who not only had a humble background, but also used religion as a cause. Emperor Zhu knew the obstacle he faced, so he decided to strengthen his grab by killing anyone he saw as a threat. And that started the next chapter of Chinese history. The founding emperor Zhu Yuancheng had a terrible childhood. His family was unable to feed the children, so he was sent to temple to become a monk, so he wouldn't starve to death. This had a long-lasting effect on his life. He lived very modestly. He changed all the palace gardens to vegetable gardens, and he put into law that his descendants would have free food, so they won't ever feel hungry. In 200 years, the emperor's descendants reached 1 million, at least according to the Book of Records, and it became a huge burden on government spending. His life is detailed in poem 27 of Tui Bei Tu. The short poem reads, "Together with the moon, the lowest of all people, the fate caused the rise. The color is red." And the long poem reads, "Golden light shined through the leaves. The light shined through Brighton all over. East of the river where the light is up, monk talked about the real empire." The rise of Emperor Zhu is a legend. And with hardly any education, no money, no support, his rapid rise can be summarized in one word: betrayal. He betrayed everyone who trusted him. So, when he became emperor, he trusted no one. He named 6 kings lords as a reward for helping him overturn the Yuan dynasty. But when he got his grab of the new empire, he killed them one by one. Throughout his life, he never let his guard down on any of his generals. And throughout the Ming dynasty, the later emperor followed suit and never gave much respect to the generals. This made Ming one of the weakest dynasties in China's history. In the short poem, the Ming dynasty can be seen in the 4th word of the 1st line and the 3rd word of the 4th line. The color red is the emperor's last name, as the last word of the 4th line. Emperor Zhu's humble background is detailed in line 2, the lowest of all people. The long poem used the word Ming in line 3, and hinted of the emperor's life as a monk in line 4. Because the founding Emperor Zhu trusted only his family, his 4th son became the most powerful general, and his grandson inherited the throne when he died. The young emperor realized the threats from his uncles, so he secretly plotted on transferring their power back to the emperor. But that did not sit well with his uncle Zhu Li, who headed the area around Beijing. He rebelled against his nephew emperor, and a major fight broke out. After the year-long fight, the uncle won and moved the capital to Beijing. He slaughtered the Nanking city, but failed to find his nephew. All these facts are detailed in poem 28. The short poem reads, "Grass had fire feet, place turned to ash, bird from home, monk outside the city." And the long poem states, "It's time for featherful to fly high, plum flower trying to catch your sight, the real dragon flee far, temple is really the home." The new uncle emperor, based on the kingdom of Swallow, which in Chinese character has grass head and fire feet, in the picture and line 2 of short poem, both showed the palace burnt. Which happened? The swallow is young emperor's uncle, so it is a bird from home. And the young emperor escaped by disguising as a monk, which was outlined in the 4th line in both long and short poems. The nephew emperor prepared to fight and trusted General Li, but he turned around and gave support to the uncle emperor. This is depicted by plum blower trying to catch your sight. The plum is the same word as li in Chinese. The uncle emperor never gave up looking for his nephew, because someone said he fled to South Asia. He sent a big fleet overseas and changed many areas in South Asia and improved trading in the area. Although Ming was not strong like the Yuan dynasty, there was peace and prosperity during the early Ming period. This is outlined in poem 29. The short poem reads, "Branches filled with green, good to support the country. What a bloom! Peace and prosperity for all." The long poem stated, "One branch point to north and one to east. The south one has the same root. Everyone praise the wonderful mother. A great time few have seen before." The Ming dynasty reached its peak during the time 1424 to 1435. It is called one of the 5 prosperity periods in China's history, and is the only one led by an empress. Empress Cheng's husband died 1 year after taking the throne. Her son reigned 9 years. Her grandson took the throne at age 9. She refused to continue to rule the empire, but asked the 3 ministers, all named Yang, to help her grandson. The three youngs are mentioned in the first two lines of both the short and long poem. And the picture showed a 3 young Liu tree, while the mother is mentioned in line 3 of the long poem. But the peace and prosperity blinded the young emperor, and when a misunderstanding happened between Ming and its northern neighbor, he decided to lead the army himself to battle. The problem started when the northern neighbor's leader, Wala, wanted to marry a Ming princess through the incompetent translator. They thought they had a deal. They gave more than 400 horses and gifts to Ming. Ming thought it was a goodwill gift, while the corrupted government kept part of the gifts for themselves. The northern neighbor thought Ming turned back on the promise when the princess did not show up, while Ming thought they lied on the size of the gift when they asked for gifts to be returned. So a small problem snowballed, and the young emperor led 500,000 soldiers to attack. This event is detailed in poem 30 of Tui Bei Tu. The short poem reads, "Half jade, half forest, together made a mess. Stone has spirit, glorious life, but end like trash. Can't miss a piece, must be the first. 6 dragon armed to the northern border. Have blessed the one where all hearts follow. Horse stops when trouble ahead." Half jade and half forest made the last word of the second short poem line, made up the name of this event, Tumu Bo. The name of the northern invader, Ye Shan, is in line 1 of the long poem. Long poem, line 3, dragon armed to border, detailed what happened. The emperor could win easily, but he failed on the logistic front, and soldiers died for lack of food and water. The emperor trusted the wrong person, and all the best generals died. More than half of the 500,000 soldiers died, and Ming failed from its peak in just days. The emperor was kidnapped, and the northern neighbors came straight to the capital with the emperor as hostage. The Yuan made a tough but important decision. She crowned the emperor's brother as the new emperor and fought back against the invaders. The brother emperor won, and the defeated north invader decided to send him a gift he does not want. They offered to send back the emperor they held. This caused a big problem. Then who should be the emperor of China? The brother emperor did not want to give back his power, so he held his brother, the former emperor. But things changed when he got seriously ill and his only son died. With no heir in sight, the crown would most likely go back to his brother, the former emperor, and it did. But the weakened Ming could no longer fight the northern invaders, so they started to reinforce the Great Wall, as that became the only thing they could do to protect themselves. With the Great Wall's protection, the Ming dynasty ruled another 80 years. So now let's fast forward to 1620. Wang Li, emperor, died, and his son, Emperor Guangzong, took the throne, but he died 30 days later, and his 14-year-old son was rushed to the throne. Xizong had no formal education and relied on his milk mother, nanny Ka Yi, and a eunuch named Wei, loyal and honest. The eunuch practically ran the government, as the emperor spent most of his time doing carpentry. This is detailed in poem 31. The short poem reads, "Filthy inside out, palace stained, a man, a woman, the country ruined." The long poem reads, "Evil covered the loyal and honest one. Then it got worse and worse. For the ones with integrity, the space no longer owned by a respected emperor." This poem is a perfect example of how hard it is to understand the true meaning of the poem. The bad eunuch, Wei, loyal and honest, ruined the empire, but when his name, loyal and honest, appeared in the poem, It did seem like calling someone loyal and honest. Teenager Emperor trusted only his nanny and the eunuch, and those two corrupted the government and killed honest and capable ministers. The country had little chance to recover after their evil deeds. The two are mentioned in the short poem, and then the eunuch's name is in line 1 of the long poem. Xizong died unexpectedly when he was only 22 years old. He had only one younger brother. Soju Yuzhan was crowned as Chongjin Emperor. He became emperor at age 16, but his life before and after getting the crown was both miserable. He was born to a low-status concubine, which upset his father when he was only 5 years old. His father had his mother beaten to death, and he was sent to other low-level concubines while growing up. His father hated his mother, so he never had any love nor care from his father. When he ascended to the throne, he tried to be a good emperor. He worked hard to right the many wrongs and never had a day's rest. But the first year of his reign, a severe drought destroyed the entire northern China crops. After 5 years of starvation, a major flood affected half of the north in the 6th year. Autumn locusts destroyed most of the crop production. And then major starvation in the 7th year. The 8th and 9th years had another drought in the west. Floods in the Long River region. The 9th year was drought plus locust. 10th year autumn crops were all lost. 11th summer locusts blackened the sky. 13th and 14th years were major droughts. In the province of Shanxi, half of the population were gone. The country was weak, but the threat from the north was getting worse by the day. While the starved farmers decided to rebel against the government, Li Ziesheng became the leader of the rebels. He was from Shanxi, the province that lost half of their population just a few years earlier. He called himself the Rider King. The emperor had many capable generals who fought with him, but Rider King always caught a second breath at the last minute. And eventually he got the upper hand and took the capital of Beijing. At the same time, another rebel, Shongxiangshong, took the Xishan province. Chongjin, the emperor, did not have enough military to fight in the south and north and defeat the army attacking the capital. When the Rider King came to Beijing, he killed the eunuch who previously had told him to surrender. He asked his queen to kill herself and tried to kill his concubine and his 2 daughters, princess, so they could die with honor. But he could not do it, so they were only wounded. He then had his remaining soldiers escort his 3 sons to safety. He then tried to fight the rebels himself, but could not move past the arrows. He tried to call his ministers, but no one dared to answer the call. So he went to a hill overlooking the forbidden palace, left a note, and then hung himself. The note read, "In my 17 years of reign, I tried to be a good emperor, but divine must not approve of me, and my kingdom suffered. Where were my trusted generals? How could I face the emperors who left the empire to me? I cover my face with my hair, as I am ashamed for failing my duties. Rebels can cut me to pieces, but please, spare my people." The sad story was foretold in poem 32. Short poem reads, "Horse jump at the north. Dog cried in the west. 8 and 9 mark the end. Sun and moon turn dark." And the long poem reads, "Young flower fell, Li flower gone. 5 color flags come from north. Signed the Nanking Empire ended. Capital now bloom with new spring color." The picture showed a horse inside a door. Putting a horse inside the character door makes the word Trump which is the name for Rider King. And horse and door are also shown on line 1. While the rebel in Sutron has the character dog in his first name, which shows in line 2 of the short poem. 8 plus 9 is 17, which is the year the last emperor reigned. The long poem told the second part of the tragedy. After the death of the emperor, the only major force is the force blocking the northern enemy Qing. The general's concubine Yuan was taken by Rider King. This infuriated General Wu. He asked the northern enemy to revenge the emperor's death. He opened the gate and joined forces with the Qing army. General Wu had China's best army, and with the help of the Qing army, they defeated the rebels and unified China. They killed all the remaining family of the Ming dynasty and started a new dynasty. Rider King Li was defeated as shown in line 1 of the long poem. 5 color flags was mentioned in line 2. As a Qing grouped their armies into 4 color flags, and each color with full colors, are color on borders. That's why they call it 5 color flags from the north. Although Emperor Chongzhen failed to stop the fall of the Ming dynasty, historically he was viewed as a good emperor. He could have escaped, but he did not. He chose death and tried hard to save the dying government. And upon hearing of his death, hundreds of his ministers killed themselves for the failing on their part. Thousands of eunuchs fought enemies with their lives, while hundreds killed themselves when the emperor died. Most eunuchs were forced to take that path when they faced starvation. But other than a few bad ones, many vowed to serve their country with dignity. The last emperor of the Ming dynasty had a difficult choice. He could put forth his best army to fight the rebels, or try to stop the foreign invaders at the northern border. He chose trying to stop the foreign invaders. If not for the many years of locusts and droughts, Ming may not have failed. But there is not much he could do when the droughts, floods, rebels, and locusts doomed his fate. Actually, his death and the way he died was predicted not only in Tui Bei Tu but in several other Chinese prophecies. Sadly, he seemed to have been fighting a losing battle even before the battle began. I love history. From a young age, every time when I read a history book, I would pretend that I boarded a time travel train and flew back to that time thousands of years ago. But there is one era in China's history I never wanted to make a stop. That is the Qing dynasty. Qing reigned China for 290 years. People have often wondered how a small barbaric group could take China and rule her with an iron fist. At the end of the Ming dynasty, Qing had only 40,000 army, with a total population of 340,000. When General Wu Shangge joined forces with them, they added 260,000 soldiers, with a 20,000 Mongolian force. It is still much smaller than the 500,000 Rider King force that wiped out the Ming dynasty. But how did they take all of China? Well, by flooding China with blood. The most horrifying record was based on the last Ming dynasty record of a 600 million total population. Not long after, Qing's record showed only 100 million people in China. Did they kill 83% of all Chinese? Without better records, we can't say. But most people believe 2/3 of all Chinese were slaughtered during that time. From this list of slaughter by city, you can see details on about 850,000 people killed. It does not include cities marked. Only less than 10 people survived in several areas. But why do they want to kill so many people? Well, because survivors would want to rebel against them. Qing ruled China with the help of the Han majority, The general who opened the gate to China after his beloved concubine was taken by the Rider King and was given to Yuan province, together with 2 other of his colleagues who did most of the killing for Qing. They were called Barrier Kings. 30 years later, General Wu rebelled against Qing, but was put off and died. This story was foretold in Tui Bei Tu, in poem 33. The short poem reads, "Yellow river turned clear, air flow with ease. Can't tell host and guest, earth showed no sun." The long poem stated, "Sky sea falls from ever white. Foreigners' triumph lasts long while. Poor kids cried no tears." Short poem gives out names of the major players. Qing, the dynasty name is the last word in line 1, while the name of Qing's first emperor is in line 2. The third line pointed out the fact that Qing army were invited to invade China in the quote, guest and host, while they come from the area of Ever White Mountain. As stated in line 1 of the long poem, foreigners, as quoted in line 2, the barriers were taken off, showed the removal of the 3 barrier kings. Poor kids reflected the massacres. Then Tui Bei Tu seemingly intentionally skipped more than 200 years of Qing's good years and jumped to 1850 to 1860 Taiping Rebellion. It is the farmer rebels that call themselves the Peaceful Country. In 10 years, between 60 million to 200 million people died. The once powerful Qing dynasty became a wreck. The short poem stated, quote, "Hair on top, clothes not white. During peaceful time, king kills king." And the long poem reads, "Blood splattered during peacetime. 5 colors chapter done with clothing wearing on. Flood rays high above, wheat no longer grow. Mainland, no more dreams, gone too." This is a great example of how impossible it is to decode the quatrain before the event unveiled itself. The farmer revolutionists called the kingdom they formed Country of Peace, so the period of the massacre is called peacetime. But the true meaning will strike upon you when the killing started. The short poem is easy to decode, as every man in the Qing dynasty had to shave the front of their head. But that was abolished in peace country territories. The Chinese wear white when a family member dies. This meant the death the conflict brought. The picture showed skeletons laying on the riverbank. The war zone was in the southern half of China, bordered by the Yangtze River, and the point to start peace country's doomed fate was when the second most powerful king tried to assassinate the leader and failed. So the king killed his right-hand man, the second king, and then his followers, just as predicted. This long poem is not as easy to understand, but I refer to bloodshed, starvation, and flood, which all happened during that chaotic time. And someone noted the leader's name, Hong Xiquan, appeared in the poem. Critics jumped on that and yelled out, "Fake." There's no way they could have known that 1,000 years ago. Actually, they did not realize that the long poem hid not only the name of the emperor, but also his son, the king who gave his life to save his son, and the names of the 2 generals that defeated him. Don't believe me? Let me show you. This is the leader, Hong Xiquan. This is the first and last name of his son, Hong Tiangui. This is the king that saved his son in the Battle of Nanking, Li Zhisheng. The poem showed his first and middle name. This is the last name of the general that defeated the peace rebels, Zheng Gufang. This is the middle name of the general that gave the final blow, Li Hongxiang. Taiping rebels changed China, and the weakened empire became powerless in the changed world. Foreign countries viewed the resourceful China as a huge market for their opium and a source for their much-needed tea and silk. China at that time was run by Emperor Qianfeng. Some historians viewed Qianfeng as a great emperor because he hired great generals and defeated the Taiping rebel threat. Some viewed him as a failure because he failed to understand the foreign threats, lost the Opium Wars, and signed a treaty that gave away rights and land. His fall was detailed in Poem 35. The short poem reads, "People from West step on capital. Emperor not to return, 3 supports keep it stand." The long poem reads, "Dark clouds from the west. Empire arrive in river on gold stage. South rebel, north fire. Luckily a brilliant one came just in time." The short poem described the Western invasion in the first line of short poem, and foretold them taking the capital Beijing in line 2, and the shocking prediction of the emperor's death while fleeing to Hot River Palace, and how his 2 queens and his brother were asked to raise his son to be the next emperor in line 4. The long poem pretty much said the same thing. The dark cloud from the west in line 1, the empire to arrive in the Hot River in line 2, how the south is still troubled by Taiping rebels, while palace in Beijing being burnt, and how the mainland was saved by some brilliant and loyal ministers. After the death of Emperor Qianfeng, the country was ruled by the new emperor Tongzi's birth mother, Empress Dowager Su Jie and Queen Dowager Qianfeng. But after the death of the Queen Dowager, Empress Dowager Su Jie became the ruler of China. She installed her sister's son, whose father was brother to Qianfeng, as the new emperor Guangzhou. Guangzhou once wanted to change China, but when Su Xie felt he overstepped his boundary, he was held in the palace as a prisoner. After 40 years of humiliation by Western invaders, a group called Boxer Rebels suggested to fight the foreigners with their fist, and they showed how they are protected even from bullets. Su Xie bought in and gave her support. Boxer Rebels started attacking the foreigners and killed the German ambassador. This led to the 1900s 8-country alliance invasion composed with England, America, France, Russia, Germany, Italy, Austria, and Japan. This is detailed in Poem 36. The short poem reads, "Delicate lady fight with fist, hard to tell good from bad. Lamp light blocked the sun." And the long poem reads, "Two fists wish to turn heaven and earth around. Chaos started from nothing. Mother and son come one by one, looking west to enter Xi'an." Cixi is known for many qualities and weakness. No one can deny her being an intelligent and decisive leader. Her wisdom somehow declined with age. She could not fight back the harm and humiliation by the foreigners till the Boxers showed how they could block bullets and fight back. She put her chips all in and caused great harm to China. On line 1 of the short poem, it showed a girl try to fight with fist. Cixi's name, Su, hid in line 1, and her name kind of linked with line 3. The emperor's name, Guangyu, is in line 4. Then the Boxer Rebellion is in line 1 of the long poem. How the Empress Dowager and Emperor fled the capital was in line 3 and line 4. Cixi got sick 8 years after the Boxer Rebellion, but she did not want the emperor she imprisoned 10 years to regain power after her death, so she ordered him poisoned. She died the day after the 38-year-old emperor. The subsequent autopsy showed he died of arsenic. His 3-year-old nephew, the last emperor of China, Puyi, was chosen, but the tide had already turned against Qing, and it ended 3 years later. This poem is about the end of the Qing dynasty and the beginning of the Republic of China. The short poem reads, "Han river flew. The non Tang succeed Tang. North and south together group same will. The long poem reads, water clear but to end. Ku in August. Empire with no king. Danger mixed with hope. Han means the land back to the Han people. And the second line showed president succeeds the last emperor, Yuan Tang. Finally, north and south merged to a new country. And the word republic is in the fourth line of the poem. The first line of the long poem stated Qing reached its end. Line 2 is about the coup. And for the first time, China has no king as stated in line 3, and the new republic faced so much chaos, just as indicated in line 4 about danger with hope. The newly formed republic had many challenges, but Tui Bei Tu only talked about one event during that time. World War I. The short poem states, a deer outside the door everyone chases. Fish can't escape, hot water run deep. And the long poem states, fire fate started, disasters run like wildfire, death like waves 10,000 after 10,000s. Ocean wave flooded rivers. The war outside is no different than happening here. When World War I started in 1914, China wished to join the Allies, but the Allies did not want to include China. However, they realized China could contribute, so they used over 100,000 Chinese for non-combat missions. Although many suffered injuries and death, but China was not treated fairly while signing the Versailles Treaty. The Allies decided to acknowledge the many unfair agreements Japan forced China to sign during World War I. It is a sad story China had to endure time and time again in the modern era. And this picture showed death outside the door and mentioned its effect on Chinese people. After World War I, fighting in China continued while the land was occupied by warlords. The economy stalled, and people suffered. In the meantime, Japan gained strength. In 1931, it started invading Manchuria. 6 years later, it started an all-out invasion of China. Japan thought they could conquer China in 3 months, but the war dragged on for 8 years. Japan surrendered in 1945 after the United States dropped 2 nuclear bombs. This is detailed in Poem 39. Line 1 shows the island country, the country of Japan, and the devastation it brought was outlined all in the short poem. And the picture showed the dummy government, ran by a bird with Japan hiding behind, showed the Wan Jinwei government, as Jinwei is the name of the bird. And the long poem correctly stated a bird in the south, which is the Wan government, and north with Lo, which is Aishin, Jolo government. It stated the year Japan surrendered, 1945, which is also the year of the rooster. Although we are only just past the halfway mark on Tui Bei Tu, we have gone through 1,200 years of Chinese history. As you can see how Tui Bei Tu focused more on changes than time. Like there was no mention about the peaceful 200 years of Qing, but focused on the beginning and the end during turbulent times. Our video showed the intriguing hints hidden throughout the prophecy book. And you can see how history was written by choices filled with blood. While going through the poems, I noticed some poems are filled with hidden names, while some are pretty much straightforward prediction of events. It feels almost like the books were written by 2 people and put together. This made me wonder if some of the poems were changed over time based on historical facts. But we can't ignore the fact that this book was written by 2 authors, Lin Chongfeng and Yuan Gang. Maybe they do have different writing styles, and maybe that is why the book is so different from poem to poem. We have learned a lot from Tui Bei Tu in these 39 poems. For one, we confirmed that the timeline is followed. There may be consecutive poems only years apart, but there was never any latter event that appeared ahead of an earlier event. We have seen many convincing decodings of Tui Bei Tu, but people usually only present one poem for one event, but are unable to pin the poem before and after to events before or after, and for that they say the sequence of events were intentionally changed by past emperors. We all know there are different versions of Tui Bei Tu, but personally I think the best one to use is this one, because it was quoted by Qing 350 years ago in poems 1 to 33. While we just showed you how poem 34 through 39 hit also with a perfect record, and actually we have cracked open many hidden messages in poems 35 to 42. We also found critical names in poem 43 and poem 44 about current events and are pretty sure what 44 and 45 mean. But we know it is not easy to believe quotes from a 1300-year-old book. So we decided to show you China's history through Tui Bei Tu. This is Ken Peters. Thank you for watching.